Welcome back to the Show My Scars podcast. I'm your host, Derek Duker. A while back, I made a social media post asking people in the 417 area if anyone would be interested in sharing their story of mental health struggles and what has helped them along the way. I got a few messages from folks willing to come on, and I'm excited to share their stories with you in the coming months. Today's episode is with a woman named Sydney, who said she has struggled with depression and anxiety since her teenage years, but following the birth of her child, postpartum depression hit especially hard. It took some drastic changes for her to begin her recovery, a journey she says is one without an ending, as she is still finding out who she is and what direction she would like her life to take. Postpartum depression affects 1 in 7 women after giving birth, so I was thankful Sydney was brave enough and kind enough to share her story with us. Here's our conversation. Having a child is one of the greatest joys in life, but can also really take a toll on the female. And so, I just wanted to thank you for coming on and speaking about such a hard topic that I can imagine.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Having a daughter was one of, is the best thing that's ever happened to me, both because it made me have to reflect on being a parent, but also reflect onto my parents and just really kind of pick and choose what I wanted to take away from how my parents parented me into how I'm parenting her. And postpartum depression was I don't remember the first 4 months of my daughter's life. And that's so hard to say because that should be the time that you're cuddling and so close and breastfeeding. And a lot of my friends also went through this, but didn't know it was a possibility that they could go through postpartum depression. It's not something that people warn you about. It's something that happens after, and you're supposed to catch it in the first 3 months, but it can happen even after a year. A lot of women will get it later on as their kids are becoming toddlers and becoming more independent. So it hit me really hard, and I just think more people should be able to talk about it.
In our messages together, you mentioned that you were struggling with anxiety and depression from a young age already. So can you describe what your childhood was like?
Yeah, I have been talking about this a lot in therapy, so I'm getting a little bit better about talking about it. But when I was little, my parents weren't very well off. My mom was 20 and my dad was 25 when they had me, and, just not in the ideal situation. They weren't married, they were dating, but not married. They didn't live together at that time, but they made the choice that they were going to stay together and work on it, and got married when I was 4. But there was a lot of instability in the beginning. There was food insecurity, and I witnessed abuse between my grandparents, and just not the best start for a kid. There was definitely love there, and I'd spent a lot of time with our extended family, and I do have happy memories, but there's a lot of shame wrapped up in everything just because my parents weren't married, and there was a lot of you were an accident kind of talk. And I knew that from a really young age that I wasn't supposed to be there. And that's really isolating and hard on a kid to find out so early, and I was a gifted kid. I was in the gifted program in school. So school was really easy and I was bored a lot. I was, hyperlexic. I'm always reading. So it was I would get in trouble for reading books, walking down the hallway and stuff. So kind of a lonely existence, I think. But it took 7 years for my parents to have another kid after me. So I have a younger brother who's 7 years younger and a second younger brother who's 13 years younger. And I've had completely different childhoods than they have because my parents are more stable now. So it's really hard because there are great things that I love about my parents, and I'm working on forgiveness for the verbal abuse and some of the physical stuff. And I'm still working on that now. I just started therapy last year, and I texted my dad this morning actually saying, I wrote this really hard letter to you. Can I send it? And he hasn't responded yet as of whatever time it is, So it just feels like I'm still growing from that childhood, and I'm 28. Like, I feel like my 30s are rapidly approaching, and there's still stuff I'm bogged down by from that. So
yeah, I definitely resonate with what you said there. My parents weren't supposed to be able to have kids and then wound up with 4. So definitely knew pretty early on that I was a mistake as well, quote unquote mistake. I don't think my mom would call me that at this point, but very shortly after I was born, 4 years later, I had twin siblings. And from then on out, I kind of felt like, that's hard for any parents, but yeah, we weren't well off either. And so I was very much off on my own quite a bit. And I had family members that were calling me antisocial as a joke, but as a child, like, I really took that in, and I was like, no, I want to be around people. But at the time I didn't realize how much anxiety I had from the instability. And that was kind of what was pushing me away in a way. But yeah, after high school, you talked about going to college. Was it in Kansas City, you said?
I went to Rockhurst in Kansas City, and that's like 4 hours away from my hometown. I needed some space from my parents, so I thought that would be a good decision. And my boyfriend at the time was planning on going to Kansas City for dental school a couple years later. And I kind of made a wild card bet that we'd still be together. And we've been together since I was 15, but we, moved to KC, and that was my first taste of like, things are hard. I had financially insecure parents still at that point, and nobody to help me with the financial stuff in college. So I was working. I was also playing soccer my freshman year, lacrosse my sophomore year, and balancing the first time I ever had to like try on like homework or anything like that, balancing my own schedule, balancing my own mental health, not having a primary care physician in Kansas City. So like, it was a really difficult time, but also like a really independent time. I ended up graduating with like a 3.4, so I was, still really proud of that. But I got a dual degree in psychology and nonprofit leadership.
Yeah, and you mentioned that that nonprofit role was kind of your sense of purpose, and you were in animal welfare. Is that right?
Yes, I worked for a very well-known rescue in Kansas City, and when I started there, we worked in a trailer out on the back of the property, where people would just come and dump their dogs, and it was really small, and we were 2 people on the fundraising team trying to raise a couple $1 million a year and doing it. By the time we left, we were in a new building, and it was beautiful and exciting, and there was a team of like 4 plus some volunteers trying to raise $10 million a year. So like, I really got to join them during like an integral part of growing. I had 1 dog that I had adopted from there when I started, and I left having 4 dogs and 2 cats.
Oh my.
They're a lot, and they've done a really good job of keeping me busy, but also like being a way to say like being a way to self-isolate too. We had a really tough dog who was not a good boy, but he was a good boy to us. So people couldn't come over because it was just easier that way. And, that did not help with like the depression or anxiety. It was kind of a way to keep myself in that space, I think.
I remember after I graduated college, I got a degree in broadcast journalism, but I took all the journalism classes I could. And so I wound up working as a sports editor at a newspaper. And I very much relate to what you said in your messages to me, that, you clung to that as a sense of identity. I felt like this is it. This is what's going to make me happy and, solve all of my problems. And then quickly I realized that that wasn't the case. What was the discovery process like for you when you started to realize like, I can't cure my depression and anxiety with a career?
When I started working there, it was like a high stress, high anxiety environment, and I thrive in that. The more pressure that's on, the better I'm gonna do. until I have burnout. And that was kind of what was starting to happen. I was there for about 3 years while my partner was in dental school, and I was the only source of income for us. And that was, something I was really proud of. I bought our first house by myself at 20, which is, not something that a lot of people can say. And that was because I was really working hard to get to that point and had finished school a semester early and was able to do all of these great things because of that pressure. And I'd always been known as like the dog girl, the animal girl. Like that's very much a part of my identity. So I got to find a way to work in a place that was okay. Like that was a great identity to have, but also like I feel like I started losing some of the rest of me too, like to that. And also like nonprofit is really disillusioning to work in. Like there's a lot of, you think it's going to be one way, you think you're going to be saving the animals and doing all of this stuff, and you actually get into it and it's just dealing with people. And some of those people are, very particular or very unkind, or like you're hearing a lot of sad stories about how people are abusing pets, or like you're seeing these dogs come in with like gunshot wounds and stuff, and then having to write like stories and newsletters about that and flip it in a way that like we did this great thing, but also like you're getting like secondhand trauma from all of this. Like you're carrying all of that on you. And like it was amazing because I was writing and we'd send our newsletters to like 200,000 people plus, and I wrote all of this incredible copy that millions of people saw. So I was really proud of that, but also like it just eats at you over time. The longer you go without being able to take a step back, because like, one of us was a student, one of us worked in nonprofit in a, kind of a middle role. Like there wasn't a lot of money for us to like take a vacation or take time off. Like it just really ate at me. And then we decided that we were going to have a baby, and we had Frankie right before my husband graduated dental school. And I mean right before. She was 9 days old at his graduation.
Oh my.
And that was, I think that was really cool that she got to be there.
Mm-hmm.
But I looked at my partner and I said, like, I can't go back. Like, I can't bring all of that home to her. And we talked about it and decided I would stay home after having her. So she was like 3 months old, and I said, guys, I'm not going to come back. And I didn't know that. I thought I was going to. I thought I was going to work long distance maybe, but it just didn't happen that way.
Can you describe like the first signs, whether it's physical or emotional, that your postpartum depression was more than what do people always call it? The baby blues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When did you realize that wasn't what you were going through? That was something more serious?
I was worried a little bit before having her that something like that was going to happen. I'd been on depression medication since I was like a teenager, and like a young teenager, probably like 13, 14. And I'd been on it pretty much the entire time. And I was 25 when I had her, so over 10 years. And they recommended that I stopped taking it when I got pregnant. And I did, and everything was fine. It was the happiest I'd ever been while I was pregnant until we got rear-ended. And everything was totally fine from that. We were both fine. But I got rear-ended about 7 months in, and then started having some anxiety and started feeling like that old kind of, just like a little bit of stress starting to come in, and kind of stayed off of the medication until she was born. And probably about a month and a half in, and that was the first time I was able to say, like, I think something's wrong. But I knew it pretty quickly. I might tear up here, sorry.
Oh, you're right.
I'm sure everybody kind of goes through this, but there were mornings when I was like, just make it until the sun comes up. And I'm holding my daughter and crying and saying, just make it until the sun comes up, and then it's a new day and we can start over. And I was, really alone during that time. Like, Charlie was working in the clinic for dental school and then got a job that was an hour and a half from our house. working 4 days a week, 10-hour days. So he would leave at roughly 5 a.m. to get there at 7:30 and then get home at probably like 7:30 or 8, hang out with me and the baby, and then go to sleep. And he couldn't do overnights like during that time because it's not safe to drive when you're that tired. And my family lived 4 hours away. So it was just very isolating. For me, that's when like it gets the worst. Mm-hmm. Being by yourself, it's like being completely alone like that, especially. And then we decided that we were going to move closer to his job, which I really love where we're at now. But we moved to a town of 700 people where we knew not a single one, not anybody. And it was 3 hours away from our parents and 2.5 hours away from his sisters. And so it was just purely alone. And when you're like that with an infant who can't talk and is only relying on you, and you're trying to breastfeed, you're trying to do most overnights, it's a lot. Like, it was just such a big breakdown of personhood. Like, I only existed to serve my child, and nobody can live like that forever.
Yeah, that's a huge shift to move like that. And not only that, but you went from being the breadwinner to now a stay-at-home mom with long periods of isolation. But you said it was almost freeing in a sense. So you went over what was particularly difficult about it, but what unexpectedly helped you during that move?
Part of it was my mom, really. She came out and helped us get the house on the market. Like, she spent a couple weekends out helping us get everything ready. And that really took so much stress off of me. If you have a baby under 6 months, I would not recommend moving. It's kind of a goofy idea. If you're pregnant, I don't recommend moving. But we kind of did what we had to. And I think, like, knowing that I can call my parents and say, hey, I need you guys, and that they would be there, like, that gave me some sense of security. And then one of the other things is, like, it was such a hard line. It was such a hard break. It was like before, like, May 3rd, 2022, I was the development coordinator. I was the dog girl. I was all of these, preconceived things. And then May 4th, I was a mom, and things were different, and things were going to have to be different. And then, like, being by yourself for that amount of time is interesting in the way that I was able to kind of think, like, what do I want to do? Like, especially as Frankie has gotten older and I've gotten a better handle on things, we're still pretty far away from our parents. We have friends now. We've built our village a little bit. Frankie started daycare at around 9 months, just because I could not handle having her every day. Like, even, like, I have the most supportive partner in the entire world. He did overnights Thursday, Friday, Saturday since Frankie was born, and let me sleep in all of those days, and still does it if she wakes up for whatever reason. But even with having somebody who can be there as much as he can, like, physically, and is there as much as he is, it was just still a lot of being by myself and trying to fill that time. And as Frankie got older, I was able to kind of start putting my life back together in a way that, like, things make sense to me now. Before she was a thought, really, I was diagnosed with ADHD as an adult, I think at like 23. And I knew we were going to start trying to have a baby soon, so I didn't want to start medication for it and then go off of it. So I was able to start medication for ADHD after she was born and kind of look at shifting the anxiety depression medication that I was on. And, like, it's night and day. Going through your whole life unmedicated for ADHD and then starting, like, I'm on a non-stimulant, like I'm on Strattera. Even that was enough to make me say, like, I don't know how I did it all before. Like, that was such a big thing. And, like, being far enough away from my parents for them not to say, like, well, why are you doing it this way? Like, I got to decide everything for myself, and that was huge.
Yeah, I feel like it probably almost, I know it has for me whenever I had to quit my job and move all the way down here. It forced me to think about myself and my needs, the things that I've put on the back burner my entire life. Mm-hmm. Was that kind of part of it, you think, as well? Like, it was forcing you to look in the mirror and start realizing what it is that you need to not only survive but thrive?
Yeah, and I think it was really interesting because I finally had everything I thought I always wanted. For a while I had the career, and then like I have the supportive partner who we bought a big house that has a pool and 5 acres, and I was a stay-at-home mom, which is everything I thought I always wanted. And then I realized it's not, and it still isn't. And if that was the life that like I had to live, I would go crazy. I did essentially go crazy for a little bit. Like, I had some like postpartum psychosis, which is also a thing. Please ask your doctors about it if you're hearing this. But like, if I would get too tired, and I was, because I had a newborn, like I saw spiders for a while, just like crawling around, casual spiders that were not there. So postpartum psychosis is a thing, and it can be really scary when you're going through that, especially in like the first 2 or 3 months of your infant's life. So definitely ask if you're seeing things that you think might not be there. But it was such a big breakdown from who I was, who I thought I was, who I had hoped I would be, to being in the trenches and seeing like I was wrong, and really starting over again at zero, like not realizing like I never knew who I was almost. I just knew like what I thought would be the right thing, what society thought would be the right thing, what my parents thought would be the right thing, and then realizing all of it was wrong.
Was there a specific moment that you noticed like a tiny piece of yourself like starting to come back?
Mostly when I started therapy, I think. Also being able to like, my partner kind of asked if I was okay. He's been really great at doing that. He's been living with somebody who has anxiety and depression and, all of this other stuff for the past almost 15 years. It'll be 15 years next year. So he, knows when I'm not okay, even if sometimes I don't know that I'm not okay. So having somebody who knew me well enough to ask and say, hey, like gently enough say, hey, maybe we should try therapy, or maybe we should talk to the doctor about your medication. That prompt was kind of a kick in the pants for me to say like, oh, something is wrong. I need to work on it. And like, I was in therapy every week with occasional appointments in between, just because I was really struggling. And within that first month, I think there was both a little part of the old me, but being able to start figuring out who I really am, that started showing up. And mostly my music choices. That was one of the first things that like reconnected me to who I was, I think.
Meaning, like, for me, sometimes, or used to, whenever I was really struggling, I noticed myself like listening to dark music a lot. Is that what you're talking about? Like,
yeah, and like just reconnecting from music. Like when I was little, we lived in St. Louis and my dad and I listened to Keishi all the time, which is like the rock oldie station. So like I got really back into like old rock, and I still am, like, but I found that I really love Led Zeppelin, which is something that I knew as a kid, but like as an adult, it wasn't something that I listened to often. And I just found myself deep diving into their music, and it was enough to kind of spark like a memory for me. And that I think like finding those threads of like who you were and being able to tie them to the new, who you are, was really important and helpful for me.
You mentioned a little bit earlier that, you've started to kind of build that village for yourself, which in a town of 700, I can imagine is an effort. I grew up in a super small town too, but so for those of us like me, what practical ways did you go about building those connections?
Baby class is where I met our very first friends in town. We did like a baby tumbling class, and it was we have like a gym in town, And basically it was just us hanging out with the other parents and our tiny babies, but that was a good start. And we hung out with them a couple times, like some parents that we met there, and kind of drifted apart because the only thing we had in common were having kids the same age. But that was enough of a start for me to say, like, I can find people, I can find things.
What finally nudged you to start therapy? Was that when your husband kind of reached out and said something?
I had always wanted to, but we had never really been in a space financially to start before. And like moving, to the rural area that we were in, I was worried about like availability of therapists. But my primary care provider was really helpful in helping me find someone who I could do virtual therapy with. And thankfully there was no wait time. That was really great. But yeah, he kind of nudged me in a very particular way, but just, said like, hey, I think it's time you start like investing in yourself. Like, we have the time. This is the first time we've ever had the money to do so. Like, you need to like get it together, basically, in a much kinder way than that.
Here's the truth. Customers don't remember safe, cookie-cutter marketing. That's why I love Two Oddballs Creative. Their whole thing is helping businesses stand out with epic websites, bold brand design, PR that actually gets talked about, and digital marketing that earns its keep. They'll even help you use AI the right way so you work smarter, not harder. Whether you need a fresh site that converts, a logo and brand that finally feels like you, or someone to run Google Ads and report results clearly, they've done it all, locally and beyond. Grab a free no-pressure proposal today at twooddballs.com, that's the number 2, oddballs.com, or by calling 417-986-6332. Be odd, be seen, or keep blending in. That's your call. Two Oddballs Creative, Springfield, Missouri's creative partner for websites, branding, PR, digital marketing, and AI. I hate to bring it back to this dark spot, but you had mentioned that you had some suicidal ideation, which I've struggled with mightily in my past. What was that first stabilizing step that kind of made it? I don't know how to explain it, but at some point for me at least, it was, I knew that wasn't a real option. Mm-hmm. And I had to like physically and out loud tell myself that a lot of times, like that's not an option for you. And the same thing, I'm sure, as it was for you, it was my child that prevented it a lot. So what was that stabilizing step for you? And like, what safety plan or signals do you use now to catch yourself before you spiral like that?
When it was like the worst before having a baby, the only thing I think that kept me alive was like my partner. I even put that in our vows, like, you're the only reason that I'm here. And I mean that. But like after having Frankie, like there were 2 people that were relying on me and counting on me. And now there are 3, and that third one is myself. And like it was really dark there for a while. We have a gun safe. My husband did cowboy action shooting when he was a kid. He was like a state champion, and his dad, like everybody in our family are gun people. But like I'm not allowed to know where the keys are to our gun safe. And that was something that like I decided, like that was my rule. But he went out of town for a conference, probably when Frankie was 8 months old, and that was the worst it had gotten. It was before she started daycare, and I, was talking myself through it, like talking to myself and saying like, well, you can't kill yourself until Charlie gets back because Frankie wouldn't have anybody and you can't leave her here alone. That's terrible. And then being like, well, I can't leave him alone either. I can't, it's not fair to either of them if I disappear. Like, that's not okay. And then being like, well, it's not fair to myself to disappear anymore either. Like, I have all of these things that, not just counting on me, but like I want to live for. So I was, being alone, being by myself, and she's sleeping, and this is the first time he's gone out of town since she's been born. And I just finally had the talk with myself that was just like, this isn't an option. This isn't a safe way to think. Like, we're not doing this anymore, period. And like, since then, I haven't thought about it, and just, it isn't something that like I ruminate on anymore. And that's been huge, just not letting myself get into that thought cycle. But like, I definitely had, like, that night I texted like the suicide hotline, and called my partner and told him like what was going on and stuff. And he was like, well, I can come home if I need to. But he had the number for our neighbors and said like, if it gets bad enough, I'll call them and I'll send them over. And they're wonderful people, so I wouldn't have any problem if they came over. But he actually had them check on me in the morning, just to make sure that I was doing a little bit better. And I think since then, so that she's 3.5 now, that's really been the last time I thought about it.
It's amazing to hear that you were able to recognize that and put plans in place. I'm so happy that you have a partner too that you're able to call. I've utilized the suicide hotline myself. I think it was just once you got to that point, it's like, okay, we're at rock bottom here, or ground zero, whatever we're at not the foundation, but we're at the bedrock. So now we can start building back up. What did it look like for you to start building back up?
So when Charlie got home, that was when he was like, hey, you need to start therapy. Like, that's when he kind of pushed me a little bit. And to anybody who knows me and Charlie, I am the one who makes the choices, makes the decisions. He's very go with the flow. So for him to, definitively say something like that was enough for me to be like, okay, let's, I have to move forward. Like, I have to keep going. I have to figure out what the next step was. To have somebody who has been there so constantly for me for that long, I think that was really only the second time that he had ever seen it get that bad. And, definitely only the first time with having a kid, but it's so easy to hide all of that on the inside, or like, just go cry in your car or the shower, find ways to be by yourself that you're not bothering that other person. But like, that other person is there for you, like with you because they love you. Like, there's a reason, that. And I think like just knowing I had to do something to like be better for the both of us, that was just enough for me to start talking, start looking, start moving forward.
Yeah, I think people forget a lot, because I'm the same way. I don't want to burden other people with my issues, but I think people forget just how much people want to be there for others. It actually scientifically has been proven that it, gives them a boost a little bit. Even in those hard moments like that, they want to be there, and because you are important to them, and they do love you so much. So it's not so much a burden that we think it is when we're so depressed like that. You said that after all of this that you then readjusted your meds again.
Yes. So I was on Wellbutrin postpartum, and before having Frankie, I had gained like 15 pounds every year that I was on it. And, that was like 60 something pounds. But for the first time in my life, I was happy. So I thought that was kind of it. And then once we moved to like Lockwood, we found new primary care providers, and she said, hey, that's not actually normal. We did some genetic testing to see what I would respond well to, and ended up switching to Prestique. So I like Prestique. I'm doing fairly well on it. But like the minute I got off of the Wellbutrin, like I started losing weight, and I started the Strattera for ADHD, and just started feeling even better. But I had nothing to compare it to before, I think. And that was part of the I didn't know something was still wrong kind of thing. But now I also see a psychiatrist, so I've added that in. I started seeing a dietitian with Nourish, and my insurance covers that completely. And she's been phenomenal too, to kind of figure out, like, let's also get our body healthy while we're getting our mind healthy. Like, I've lost 65 pounds in the past year. And most of it I attribute just to getting off of the Wellbutrin and onto the Strattera and kind of figuring that out. But yeah, like med management is such an important part of it. And I probably wouldn't be here, but I wouldn't be where I am without that like med management portion of it. Like there's no shame in that to me. Since I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression, when I was little, my family didn't believe in medication for it. It was just tough it out. And then a couple of years after I was diagnosed and they saw my first panic attack, my mom was diagnosed and she started taking medication for it as well. And that's been kind of a reoccurring thing. Like I'll try something new. It gives her permission to try something new. So now I'm trying to convince her to get evaluated for ADHD also, because it's genetic. But yeah, it's like the med management portion of it is just so important.
Yeah, what do you think listeners should know about talking with their providers in regards to medication? Because I've learned you really have to advocate for yourself a lot. And one thing that I wish I would have started this a long time ago, but I've started to now, is like keeping a journal of the medications I've been on, because I don't know if this is like this for everybody, but the providers I've had, and I've had several, don't keep good notes on like why you stopped or what you experienced while on them. And I have treatment resistant depression, so I've been on so many that there's some that they bring up and I'm like, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
But is there any tips or anything that you have?
What was really helpful for me, because I've been in 3 different like med systems throughout my life, one when I was a kid, one when we were in KC, and then one when we're down here, is just printing, like going back and like printing off my medical summaries from like all of my visits and having them in a binder. I only did that pretty recently though, so that's not anything. But advocating for yourself is so important, and it's so hard because you're in a place that you're saying like, I'm not okay, and you're having to tell somebody else that you're not okay. I cry at doctor's appointments every single time I go, no matter what, even if I'm there for a hangnail or something. Like I will cry every time I go, and it's just because that's a high stress environment for me. You know, I've had some big breakdowns in the doctor's office saying I'm not okay, so it is really hard to go in there by yourself. I've taken Charlie to a couple appointments, and that was really helpful. Having the ADHD, I am notorious for not remembering things or not writing things down. But like I have a detective notebook in my purse now that I'll write, like if I think of it at any point in time, I'll just write down little notes in. But like pre-writing, like sitting down probably a day or two before the appointment and pre-writing down like my concerns, and then making sure that list gets brought with me, that's been crucial. And then also just like the psychiatrist that I see is a specialist. Like she is incredible. She has been so willing to try different things with me, like different medication, different, pretty much everything. She's just been really phenomenal. So if you can, like a psychiatrist who actively cares about what you're saying is so important. I know that there are a lot of medical professionals out there where it feels like they don't have that personal connection, personal touch. And she's the first psychiatrist I've seen. So I think I just maybe got lucky with how great she is.
Something that you said to me off air resonated with me pretty deeply, is that you said that this is a journey without an ending currently, and that you're still reparenting your inner child, discovering your true self. What does that look like in an actual week for you?
So it's been really interesting. Frankie started preschool. She was in daycare before, but she was just doing 2 or 3 days a week, kind of depends. But now she's in school from, 7:30 to 3:30, 4 days a week. And one of the days Charlie's off. So we normally golf or kind of goof around. But those other 3 days are mostly appointment days for me every other week right now. So I'll have therapy one day, dietitian one day, and then once a month I'll have psychiatrist. But every other week, every other week will be days that I have time to do things for myself. And we have chickens and turkeys now. So some of that time is taking care of them and cleaning out the coop. But there's a lot of time for like introspection while I'm physically doing things, like while I'm gardening or while I'm taking care of the chickens or going on a walk with the dog. And that physical movement aspect is huge, especially because like I don't have the same sad ruminating thoughts when I'm moving my body. And then I've leaned in really heavily on like making art. I do taxidermy now, which is a gross hobby, but it's really cool. It's so cool. I found a goat on the road one day. It was passed. I said, I want that skull. I'm going to go pick it up and figure it out. And now we have probably 10 skulls at home and other bones or incorporating that into our art. So it's been really fun to make stuff and to decorate our house and find out the things that I'm actually interested in by trying them. A lot of my days are filled with like new stuff. I said earlier that I started substitute teaching. Last week I did 6th grade 2 days in a row for the first time, and it was awful. And I probably won't do it again with 6th grade, but now I know.
Right,
now I know that's not my thing. So most of the days are just trying something new.
Yeah, you've said multiple times that your husband has been a huge support during this entire process. You mentioned a couple different things, but what did he do that truly helped? And was there anything unhelpful that he did, even if well-intended?
He's definitely, like, we've been together since I was 15. He was 17. High school sweethearts, my sophomore year of high school. I actually met him in 8th grade. I was in 8th grade. He was in high school. And I looked at my friend Emily and I said, I'm going to marry him. And she said, you're insane. And I said, no, I'm going to marry him. And then, I did. So some of it is just that stick-to-itiveness I think that we both have. But, he is so committed to, loving me. M-E. Regardless of, who I am at the moment, there's something, I guess soul-wise, inherently, who I am is, who he loves. He has been with me for 15 years, but I've, have been 10 different people in that time, and he still, finds things that we talk about. And I think that's been one of the biggest things is, we were long distance for a few years while he was in school in Cape Girardeau, and I was in school in Kansas City, and we learned how to talk and just, we are best friends. And I can tell him, I sometimes say, can I say something weird? And he's like, you don't have to ask that. You're going to say something weird. But he has been so helpful to just be able to say hey, we need to talk about this. And, I am not good at doing chores like laundry and dishes and, everyday kind of stuff. It's just not my forte. But we found a really good balance for us. And he's not afraid to talk to me about the hard things. And he's quiet enough that if he says something, it means something. So that, I think that was really helpful, was him just being able to say hey, you need help and I can't help you this time. And he also, it's kind of helpful, but it's also not helpful sometimes, won't let me mope. Sometimes I just want to mope. Sometimes I just want to rot in bed. And he's like, we're not doing this. This is a waste of our time. Come on. So knows me well enough to know when to say I need help and when to, kind of just push me a little bit harder, I think.
Yeah, I have an episode on here about difficult conversations, and I did so because that communication aspect, it's cliche to say that you need to be open and communicative with your partner, but there are so many things out there that I've left unsaid. And I think true love is like being willing to go that far and have those kinds of conversations. And I mean, I love deep conversations anyway, but it's when you feel like this might them off or, you know, this. Yeah. But if it means something to you and you believe that that other person loves you, it may be hard to hear, but they're going to be receptive to that if they truly love you, I think. And those deep and hard conversations are what really shape a relationship, I believe.
When we first got together, like, we were not on the same opinion politically. He was born in a very Republican household, whereas like my family was on welfare. My dad was a carpenter in 2008 and everything, you know, kind of fell apart. He lost his business. So we were on food stamps and Medicaid and, you know, all of government services and stuff for a while my parents got their stuff back together. And he was open to hearing that story, you know, even at 17, when like most guys aren't, like most people aren't. Like, he was open to being like, oh, maybe, you know, it's not what I heard when I was little. Like, just that being open to change is such a big part of like why, you know, why I love him, like why he and I fit so well and like communicate so well, because neither of us are ever like right, period. Like there is no like right period in our marriage. And that's been helpful and really annoying at times. But like, I know not everybody is so lucky to have, you know, found their person when they were a kid, but I was, thankfully.
Yeah, that's awesome. Sounds like a nice guy.
Yeah, he's pretty great. He's pretty great.
If there is a partner out there that's listening, what is one concrete do this tonight action that you think they should do to support? I have written down a new mom and postpartum depression, but I think so much of your story relates to just a partner in general who's struggling. So what's something that somebody could do tonight to support their partner?
Sometimes it's just the things that you're not being asked for. I have a friend right now who is in the early stages of motherhood, and I was just with her the other day, and she said that her husband walked in the room and took the baby and said, why don't you go take a bath? Like, why don't you go take 30 minutes? And she's like, I didn't ask for that. And she said she sat in the bath and cried because she was just so grateful to have time to herself. And like, I have been there, like, you know, and sometimes it's like just doing the other person's chore. Like, it's just like a little thing. Like, it could be, you know, it's not your night for dishes, but you do the dishes so your partner can go play Pokemon. That has, you know, Charlie's not into Pokemon. He likes Destiny, but he's been playing that for as long as we've been together. So he's a big video game guy. So I know if I can take something off his plate so he can like go play video games, or, you know, just like something small that we can do for the other person. I said I was having a hard day the other day, and he brought home dinner, so I didn't have to think about it. And completely did the entire thing, like knew what I would want from the Pizza Hut and ordered it and didn't ask me, and I didn't have to think about it. For a new mom, especially, like, you're thinking about everything you're doing. Like, when did I make this bottle? When did I, like, it is hard. So just doing something that the other person doesn't have to think about would be huge.
What were some of the lowest effort but highest return habits that you used on the hardest days?
Mostly listening to music, like just having Spotify on. My daughter is neurodivergent and was just got her assessment at Arc of the Ozarks. Shout out to them. And she does not like music currently. She has a really hard time with sounds. So like in the car for a really long time, it was just silent. And I won't wear headphones in the car, but I bought a pair of noise canceling headphones, and I will just like cook dinner with those on, like on hear through mode, so I can still hear her if she's saying something. But just like finding some music that's going to give you like a dopamine rush that was such a key thing for me. When she was littler, she did listen to music a lot. So in like the witching hour is what people call it, but it's like from 5 to 6 or maybe some weird time in the afternoon for you where they're just inconsolable or crazy or, really hyped up. I would just blast some country music, like old country music, and we'd listen to Dolly and I would sing and she would just laugh and, it connected us a lot. So like for me, that's such a huge thing. It's just listening to music and like, if I can, I try to wash my face. Like sometimes those like hygiene habits get really skewed when you're in the early stages of being a mom. But like if you have a clean face, like that's such a good start. It just really helps. And then also like eat something, even if it's just like a bag of Takis or something, like just making sure that you have some amount of food and that you've taken care of yourself so you can fill up other people's cups, just the teeniest bit like that. That's super important.
One thing I've noticed is like I have a hard time giving myself permission to have needs. Mm-hmm. How do you let go of that guilt to have your own needs as a parent?
We actually, like Charlie and I had this conversation before we even had her, that one of the things that comes first is our marriage, because we cannot be good parents if we're not being good people. And like we can't be good people if we're not, working on our actively working on our relationship. And I know that sounds backwards to a lot of people, but making the commitment to that really forced us to like, I have to take care of myself to be able to take care of them. So I do still feel that guilt, especially when it's like, cooking dinner right now is our biggest struggle, because I'm trying to cook and she came home from school and wants to hang out and I'm trying to get her involved in cooking, but sometimes I'm just like, I need 20 minutes to just, it is okay for them to just go watch Gabby's Dollhouse for 20 minutes. Like you should not feel any stress about like taking that time for yourself, because you can't care for them if you're burnt out. Caregiver fatigue is so real.
Yeah, I think that's that's something that's hard for me right now. Is like I've had a love-hate relationship with technology, and so and especially now with like shorts and TikToks and reels and all mm-hmm. these things that are just, to me, brain rot. Sorry mm-hmm. if everybody else loves these things, but I hate them. I feel bad about, like, I've never been the dad that's like handed her a tab. I'm like, would you go off mm-hmm. somewhere? And so I have I catch myself doing this all the time, where it's like when I'm bored, I wander over to wherever she's at and like check on what she's doing. I think I try to include her too much sometimes. Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, that burns me out, because either there's rejection that's coming from her or I can tell, like, she's like, would you just leave me alone? But I'm just, I don't want her, because when I was little, I'm a big video game guy myself. And so when I was little, I would isolate and go play video games. And next thing I know, I'm like, oh shoot, it's been like 4 mm-hmm. hours. And I don't want that for her, because it was such a, like you said earlier, like it was a lonely existence in a house full of people. And I just don't want that for her. So yeah, it's comforting to hear that from another parent that, it's okay. Because yeah, I don't have a whole lot of things that I do just for myself. And my daughter is now 13 years old and has friends that she, talks to and everything. Now I have, not a whole lot, but I have some times where I'm like, I have nothing to do. And that is scary. Especially for a type A person, where I'm like, what do I do now? Do you experience that at all?
No, not really. I'm really good at finding things to do. Yeah. But also, like, I think that's really cool to have a dad who will come and, chase you down a little bit and still want to hang out. That is kind of like where my relationship with my dad like slowed down, or like got really quiet when I, started becoming a teenager. Like he didn't know how to handle that. So it's like really cool that you're still, actively trying. And
I appreciate that. Yeah. 'Cause yeah, my dad, a lot of the memories that I have, especially from a young age, is going and asking him to play catch, and he's like, no. And so, as many parents do, I feel like, I'm trying to be almost the exact opposite. Mm-hmm. I have to watch myself because I don't want to be a helicopter parent or, rely on my daughter entirely for my own happiness. And she's been such an easy kid to have, and she's super fun. She is who I kind of used to be growing up, like high energy, always joking around. And so we get along like, best friends at times. And when she has friends over, I kind of let them go wild, and my mom is like, I don't remember being that high energy as a kid, but it's because I give her the freedom to do that. I was always so afraid to be loud or so afraid to, be myself at times because there was always somebody right there to be like, don't do that, or you need to be quiet, or, had something negative to say to me. And I just do not want those voices bouncing around in her head. So I don't know if I'm doing it right. I don't know if anybody knows if they're doing it right from what I hear, but I'm doing my very best. I appreciate you saying that. For someone hearing themselves in your story, what is the very next step that you think they should take in the next 24 hours?
I think even just getting onto Psychology Today and starting to look for a therapist, if they're not at that point, that is so key. Therapy was just such a turning point for me. And I know I didn't get to it much, but I see Dr. Whitman in Kansas City, and I see her virtually, and has just been life-changing, because sometimes it's as simple as saying well, I feel this way about myself. And she says, well, that's stupid. Why? Why do you feel that way about yourself? And just having somebody say that, that quiet part that, deep down, you're not stupid, you're not lazy. Having somebody else say that to you makes it real, gives that little part of you that knows that, some validity, and that makes all the difference. But also just, hug your partner. If you have one, if you don't, hug your dog, hug your cat, go adopt a pet if you need to. I mean, just having somebody there that relies on you keeps you here, keeps you grounded, and you're not a burden. I don't think anybody is. I think once to my mom, I said something along the lines of I'm not doing okay. And she said that it was a gift that I told her because she got to help me feel better. So I've always tried to keep that in mind. You're not being a burden, you're gifting this person an opportunity to help you. Mm-hmm. And that's not something you do every day.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with me and my listeners. You've been incredibly vulnerable throughout this whole conversation. And I can't tell you how much that means to me, but also to the people listening, because I think so many people are out there suffering in silence. And if they were to open up to others and let other people know that they are not alone in this, I think it would make a huge difference. So thank you so much again for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And if you're in Springfield, Missouri, you have to check out Springfield Leather Company. They were actually one of the biggest parts of my healing journey too. Just got to be creative and going in there and being vulnerable and saying, I don't know what I'm doing, and them being able to say, hey, try this, was incredible. So really highly recommend just even going in there. They have rocks, crystals, all sorts of cool stuff, but they're just phenomenal people. It is a safe place to be vulnerable. So I love them.
Yeah, I actually shop there myself.
Really?
My daughter makes bracelets, so we go in there all the time. So yeah,
that's my favorite place in the whole world, I think.
Yeah, we walked in there, and I was like, hey, I'm a single dad, and my daughter wants to make bracelets, and I don't know the first thing about that. And they took me around the store and helped me out. So yeah, I definitely recommend them as well.
They're phenomenal.
Didn't know we were going to plug Springfield Leather Company for this, but hope they enjoyed that.
I tell everyone I know that's my favorite place. So.
Well, thank you again.
Yeah, thank you.